How to start a worm bin. This is one of the questions that I get asked quite often. And so I'm going to be demonstrating how to start a worm bin, and I'm going to be sharing some tips as well. So to start a worm bin, you are going to need a container that you're going to have your worms in. The type of container that you choose for your worm is going to depend on how many worms you're getting, what amount of food scraps you have for your worms in a month. It's also going to depend on your health in terms of your ability to lift, because worm bins can get quite heavy. So if you are among those who are not able to do a lot of lifting, then you may want to consider using a stackable worm bin. If not, then you can simply use a regular tote as a worm bin or any other of your choice. So here we have a shoebox that I'm going to be using to demonstrate how to start a worm bin. Now for your bedding, you can use shredded cardboard. If you're going to use shredded paper, I strongly recommend mixing it with some other form of bedding, because shredded paper tends to compact and restrict airflow in your worm bin, which is detrimental to your worms. Now you can use coco coir, peat moss, compost. If you're using compost, I suggest mixing it with something else too, because compost do compact. Then you want to moisten whatever it is that you're going to use as bedding. And after moistening it, you want to give it a squeeze. And you want to see 2 to 3 drops of water coming out. If you see water running out when you squeeze, it means it's too moist, which means you need to add more bedding in order to absorb the extra moisture. You're also going to need your worms. If you're using stackable trays, then it is recommended that you start with 50, 100 or 250 worms. If you are using a tote, you can start with that amount, or you can start with a pound of worms. These are European night crawlers. So now that we have moistened the bedding, and your bedding doesn't have to be this much in your worm bin, but I like to add a lot of bedding in these small bins because I'm not going to be feeding these worms very often in this particular bin, and so I just fill it up because it helps to keep the worms warm, and the more space your worms have, the more they're going to multiply. I also have a banana peel here. You can choose to blend it if you want your worms to eat it faster, or you can freeze it and then thaw it and put it in the worm bin, or you can dice it up into smaller pieces. Because worms do not have teeth, they have a gizzard, so the smaller the food scraps, the faster they can eat it. The worms feed on both the food scraps and the microbes. So what I'm going to be doing is, you want to bury your food scraps in the bottom of your bin, or as deep as you can get it, and that is to help to control fruit flies. I also have some old rice here, cooked rice. Now if you're going to be feeding things like rice, flour and cornmeal, please keep in mind that these can make your worm bin get very hot, so you don't want to add too much in there because it can kill your worms. Now we have the European night crawlers, and what we're going to do, there are 4 of them, and you just simply put them on the surface and they will gradually go down. Worms don't like light, so they will go down into the bin and they will go wherever the food scrap is. Now worms will feed on both your bedding, irrespective of what type of bedding you choose. They will feed on your bedding and they will feed on the food scraps. Now if you want to see more about how to look after these worms, stay tuned for next week's video, where I will be giving you more information on how you can maintain your worms or what to feed your worms. So if you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends, and you can leave a comment in the section below. If you have a question, please feel free to ask your questions and I will get back to you. Thank you so much for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day. Yeah man, a time for grow.